So, hello everybody. Thank you for joining me again. This time I will go and talk about the my stay in Denmark when I went to Copenhagen. And first of all, I would like to mention a few things. First of all, I'm a little bit sick, you could say. I have a cough, so I will cough from time to time. Don't be alarmed. And the other thing is that I found some more photos. So here's the photo of that apartment where I stayed in Kolding. So as you see, the beautiful people also had beautiful apartment. And here's also another picture from Odense. I wasn't all the way in the center. This is just more like on the outskirts, kind of close to the highway. Okay, so basically last time I finished when I was in Roskilde University, and I always slept outside at this parking lot. I don't really have too many good photos, but I usually stay there, just watch some movies before I went to sleep. And sometimes it was kind of funny because I was just like laying on the hood of my car, and out of nowhere some people kept like passing by looking at me, like kind of funny. So it was kind of interesting. Anyways, what I did after that was that I drove to Copenhagen a couple of times. I always kept coming back. And I was meeting with my friends that I met a couple of years ago when I walked from Czech Republic to Sweden. So yeah, I just wanted to kind of like meet everybody and see how they did. And it was kind of difficult to drive to a city like that. And for some reason, my Windows Phone GPS kept freezing. So, I just couldn't see where I was. So I had to like stop and try to restart it and stuff. And it was really hard to find parking space in the city. Most of it was paid. So I had to find some streets, a couple blocks, away from the center, and then park it and then take the train. So yeah, it was a little bit of hassle to get there. Anyways, if you know something about Denmark, especially Copenhagen, people on bikes everywhere. So it was kind of nice. Not that many cars, really. So yeah, first of all, I went to see this office that was established by the government, and they have the organization that supports filmmakers, like all kinds of filmmakers, commercial, non-commercial, independent, whatever. And they are housed in this building that has like a cinema, it's a regular cinema. And then you had like a store. You could buy films, on DVD. You had like merchandise, different items and stuff. It was like whole experience. It was pretty awesome. So in these upper floors, you had these offices, and then you had this shop and the cinema. You could buy like magazines and stuff. So it was pretty amazing, that they like put all this stuff into one place. And of course, I enjoyed it a lot, and I was like, why don't we have that in Prague or somewhere? That'd be pretty awesome. And I talked to this guy who was in charge, and I asked him like, hey, do you think it would be possible for me to like stay here and watch you guys work? And he was like, yeah, but what we really do most of the time is just we keep sending emails, so there's not really that much to see. But he invited me to an event that they had like the next evening. And what they do is that they screen these films, like short films, mostly independent. And they invite like all the filmmakers to come together, like didn't matter, if they were commercial or not. And so I was there, and I got to talk to so many of them, even like experienced filmmakers, who have been like around for decades. And of course the young talents, like this guy that was just keep he just kept writing screenplays all the time. So I like that. And at the time, because like they had also like beer in there, you know. And I was talking to this group of actors, and they were like, "Hey, you know, why don't you get a beer with us?" And I was like, "Yeah, but you know, I kind of drove here, and then I would have to go like back outside the city so I could sleep." And one of them was like, "Oh, that's okay. You know, you can just sleep at my place." So yeah, I got some beer with them, and then we went to his apartment. And he was like, "Yeah, you know, you can sleep here, and I'm just going to, you know, get some more drinks in the bar." So he had this apartment. It was in the center, but it was kind of in the attic at the top floor. So you had to ascend like 5 or 6 floors, and it didn't have any elevator. And also, this apartment didn't have any bathroom. It had like a toilet, but it didn't have any, you know, bathtub or shower or anything. And it was kind of funny because next morning I woke up and he came back, and he brought some girl with him. You know, you know what I mean. So it was kind of funny because you know I kind of like tried to politely get out of there then, because I was like, yeah, I'm not gonna disturb you, but you know, do you have like a shower here or something so I could like wash myself before I go? And he was like, yeah, no, there is no shower. And that girl was like, wait, what? Are you kidding me? You don't have a shower here? I was like, no, not really. And so, yeah, then I left the city again. And the next day, I returned so that I could check out Illutron, which was a co-working center. But it was on a boat, you know, it was at this place called Reshalön, and it's like a northeast-ish, more like east part of Copenhagen. And so I drove there, and it was kind of like abandoned, you know, just like these storage houses and stuff. And so it was kind of really accessible. And so I went there to meet the guys. So they told me, like, you know, I got to meet them. And they said that in a couple of days they had this event called Modulation Grand Prix. And, you know, I could go there if I wanted to. So what was kind of interesting about this Modulation Grand Prix, it was kind of like, you know, like music competition, but they kind of put a twist on it, because at that same time there was a next round of Eurovision. So they actually streamed Eurovision from the TV. And in case you don't know what modulation is, in, you know, in the music sense, then basically what they did was they had like a musician who was actually more like a DJ. So he took music and then he remixed it using modulation. So it didn't really like sound anything like the original. So they had a team. One person was modulating music and the other one was actually modifying the picture. So you could see like the artist on the screen, and the picture was maybe like distorted in some way, you know, or like changed in colors and stuff. So it was very creative that way. So they had like different teams competing, and it was one huge party because it was in this storage area of the boat. So there was a lot of people, you know, and food and drinks and all that, and it was a really good event. I liked that a lot. Unfortunately, I couldn't stay there because Illutron didn't have any like living quarters or anything like that. But I just slept in the area, like, you know, in my car again. I just parked it close to those storage houses because, you know, nobody, it wasn't really guarded or anything. So let's see, I have my notes from that time because it was so long time ago. Yeah, I didn't really have much more to do at that time because I had to return to Czech Republic, and so that I could work on United Film. But just before I left, I went to buy some groceries in the local store, and I, as I walked out, I saw this guy standing on a corner. Some young guy who was like younger than me, and he was like waiting for someone. And suddenly some older guy, with beard, and he looked kind of like homeless, old dirty clothes and a beard. He was kind of unkempt and stuff. But, strapped around his neck, he had this Canon 5D DSLR, and, that's like pretty expensive. So, on one hand, this guy looks like he's homeless, but he has this camera, which kind of sparked my curiosity. And he just, they exchanged a couple of words, and then this homeless guy left. So I went to this guy that kept standing there, and I was like, hey, what was that about? Like, do you know this guy? Who is it? And he was like, I don't know. I never seen him before. So I asked him, yeah, so what did you guys talk about? What did he want? And he was like, no, nothing, just... he just told me that there is a concert here in Christiania, and that they play some really nice music. So, in case you don't know what Christiania is, that's an area in Copenhagen, which is kind of like outside the law, but it's not really like lawless in sense like you would think from movies, but it's more like hippie lawless, like people really live in their own way. Do what they want, and police doesn't really go there. But they don't pay taxes and stuff. You probably would have to look it up to find all the details. But Christiania was not, was kind of like it's right next to the haven, next to the port, or this area where Ilutron is. And we went there because his friend came around, and she was like, hey, who is this guy? Like, you want to come with us? I was like, yeah, sure, why not? So we got some drinks and we went there to check out the concert. And there was it was full of people, like so many, because this concert was for free, like everything you do there, just, you can do it in whatever way you want. So they were playing some reggae music, and these guys introduced me to their friends. And because it was almost over, they were like, hey, once this finishes, we will go to, one of them told me, like, we will go to my boat. You want to come with me? So I was like, yeah, sure. And so we went, and next to Christiania is a bay, It's like, it's not really a part of the port itself, but it's like a place where people have their own like schooners and little boats, like not really anything fancy, kind of like normal, like like the cheaper ones. And it was kind of funny because this one time I was there and I tried to park my car because I was going to check something. And there was this house. I think it still counts as part of Christiania, so it wasn't really like in a good condition or anything. But, I didn't really think anybody would live there, but of course you never know. As soon as I parked and tried to walk away, then some guy walked out. And, he also looked like homeless, like a beard and stuff. It's I really hate to like put it into stereotypes, but that's how they really looked. And he looked kind of crazy, and he looked at me, I was like, and he said something, and I didn't know what it was. I think it was in Danish. And I was like, yeah, sorry, I don't understand you. And he was like, not good idea to park here. And, he kind of looked like if he told me he was going to kill me if I wouldn't, park somewhere else, I would probably believe him. So I was like, okay. I just like parked somewhere else. But, you know, he wasn't really like threatening me or anything, but just his face looks really scary. So yeah. Anyways, we went to this guy's boat. It was like this, you know, like normal boat with the cabin, and, you know, it's like kind of like old already. And he said that he was repairing it. But, you know, I'll get to that later. So we just drank some, you know, more beers and stuff. And I told them my story, you know, and what happened and stuff, and like how I went to Sweden and why I came back to Denmark, you know. And then this guy said like, hey, I'm going to sleep here tonight. If you want, you can sleep here too. So I was like, yeah, sure, why not? You know, I was going to go back to Czech Republic anyways. So, you know, at least I would like experience something new. And so after his friends left, then, you know, he also told me his story. And he told me that he used to be really rich. And he used to play poker. So he and his friend, you know, they got to travel around the world through the expensive hotels and casinos and all that. But, you know, he eventually reached that point because, you know, he was still very young. He was like in his 30s. And he reached that point when he was like, you know, this money doesn't make me happy, really. You know, and so what he did was just that he stopped doing this. And, you know, he bought this really expensive apartment in the center of Copenhagen. And he lived there with 3 other people. And for the rest of the money, he bought this boat. And he took it, you know, around the world to Asia. You know, he just like sailed there. It was pretty insane when you think about it. But that's what he did. And, you know, since then he started living like a totally normal person, like maybe even less than that, because, you know, his apartment was, maybe it was expensive, but it didn't look like it. You know, it looked totally normal. You know, so, and he wore like even less than normal clothes because he changed them in like once in 3 days, maybe. You know, he didn't really care about, you know, how he looked or what people thought about them or about him. But interestingly enough, he was really focused on, you know, like self-development, like how to be happy, how to like survive in this world and, you know, don't go crazy. He had some, you know, mentors and stuff. And I think that he even had some life coach. And he said that he was like really happy in the way he lived. So that was pretty amazing, you know. It was really inspiring. And he's not the first person that I met who experienced this. So eventually, at some point, you know, a lot of rich people actually like reach this idea that, you know, the money, well, like having too much money isn't going to make them happy. So yeah. Anyways, he told me that his roommate was gone for a couple of days so that I could stay at his place. So I moved there. And it even had its own parking space, you know, so it was very awesome. And so, yeah, in turn, he also showed me around the city, some areas that, you know, you wouldn't find as tourist. Like, you know, I took some photos. And he also introduced me to some more people there. So it was pretty awesome. If you would like to travel to some places and get to know them better, always try to talk to local people, of course. You know, don't just rely on the internet and stuff. And, you know, he was really good at meeting new people, naturally, you know. So sometimes we just went to a pub or a bar and we just could like talk to others, you know, it was no problem. You know, that was an experience I never had in Czech Republic. I don't think that people here are too used to meeting new people. especially if they are from other countries. But I think that Denmark is much different in that way. Of course, it depends a lot on your own attitude as well. Um, so yeah, another thing that I found while I was in Copenhagen was Club Kurt, which is a name for a group of people who screen independent films, like short films. They always have like some outdoor screening. So they have like a screen and these like bleachers where people can sit and watch the films. And they always invite the filmmakers who made those films. So people could like watch it, watch the film, and then the filmmaker would talk about it. You could like give them questions and stuff. So I, of course, made some new friends that way. For example, these guys that made kind of like reality show, called Superheld in Danish. And it was actually this funny series about a guy who thinks he's a superhero, but he's not. He just like dresses, like a superhero, but he doesn't have any powers. And it makes a lot of funny situations. So events like this, they are really useful for filmmakers, and it inspired me a lot. Seems like a good way how to bring people together, because it worked for them. I mean, there were people watching these films, as audience. So, yeah. I stayed there for a couple more days, but I think that, yeah, there's not that much more interesting stuff that I can talk about. Overall, I enjoyed being in Denmark, and if I could, I would probably go back there, because I still feel like there are still many things to see. It's just that every time I travel like this, I'm very limited by my budget. That's why I took this car, because, when I damaged it, as you could see on the picture, then it's very cheap to fix it. I mean, I broke the front fender. Well, granted, I replaced it myself when I returned, but overall it costed me like what, like 150 euro, which is like $180. It's not so bad. If I had more expensive car, then it would be much more. So, especially because this was more like a very risky business. I wanted to really know, how much more I can push myself. And when you risk like this, you don't want to like risk too much, unnecessarily. So if I took my other car, because my other car is a BMW, then that would be like much worse if something happened to it. It was the same when I did United Walk, when I brought a cheap tablet and a cheap phone with me in case I would lose them or break them or something, or forget them somewhere. So yeah, it's always good to think about that stuff ahead also. Anyways, that would be probably all about my stay in Denmark. I think it's a really nice country. It's not for everyone, because the landscape is not too interesting, but there are some really interesting facts that you can find about, and overall I had a very positive impression, so hopefully I'll be able to go back again. I think what's killing the tourism a little bit is that there is a toll on the bridge inside the country, and if you're going to Sweden, then of course another toll going through Öresund all the way to Malmö. And yeah, so when I actually returned back, I had to pay another 34 euro for the trip, just to cross the bridge. And one thing that happened to me, because on the way back, it took me like 3 days before I returned to Czechia. And I always slept in a car at these like resting places next to highways. And in Germany, on this one occasion, it was kind of creepy, because you know, my car, it doesn't have tinted windows. So at night, this one time I woke up and I saw like some guy just like standing outside the window and just staring at me, you know, as I was sleeping. And I was like, oh my God, I'm so happy that I locked my car from the inside. But, how would you feel if you open your eyes and you can see some guy on the other side of the window staring at you, you know, and just like standing there for minutes? And then he went into his car and he like lit up a cigarette and still kept looking at me. And I was like, okay, I can't do this. So I just, without exiting my car, I just like crawled, you know, from the back seat to the front seat and just drove away from there. Well, luckily he didn't follow me, so I just went to the next stop and then I slept there, and it was fine. And you know, I'm not really sure if it's like illegal or if there's any problem with it, because like the next morning I actually checked and there were other people sleeping in their cars. So I don't know. Sometimes you get unlucky, I guess. But yeah, I was kind of creeped out, and I was like, I don't know if I should like get out of my car and like, you know, threaten him to go away. So, you know, we have seen a lot of crazy movies about crazy people that you meet outside. So sometimes you can get paranoid, and these people kind of enforce this idea. Anyways, so thank you for listening to my story about Denmark. I will make more videos soon, hopefully. And I think that it would be cool to also talk a little bit about this United walk that I did. I can tell you some details, how I actually walked from Czech Republic to Sweden. Maybe you will hear some interesting things that happened to me. So yeah, thank you for watching, and have a great day. Bye bye.